Welcome to another episode of the Libertarian Christian Podcast, a project of the Libertarian Christian Institute. I am your host, Doug Stewart, and as you can see, I have two guests with me in a studio on air. At least that's what it says behind them. So we are going to talk about some theology debates and how to grow an organization that does theology debates and how to do it well. I have Sarah Stone and Evan McClanahan with me. Thank you guys for joining me.
Yeah, excited. It's going to be fun.
So you guys are part of an organization called Theology. Is it Theology on Air or Theology by the Pint, or is it both? What's the actual
Theology
organization?
By the Pint.
Okay, and your podcast is Theology on Air. Okay, so Theology by the Pint, which is that's just a killer name. I love that because everybody knows what it means. It means you're gonna drink and talk theology. Like, it's just very obvious what that means. So from a branding perspective, kudos to you on that. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Sarah. I'll let you start. And what is Theology by the Pint?
Yeah. So I am a single mom and a theology nerd, and I've been in and out of ministry for a long time. I actually have my degree in counseling psychology and was a therapist for a while. But then life sort of took its turns, and I ended up doing singles and young adult ministry at a local church. And that's kind of the space I was in when Theology by the Pint was born. It used to be called Theology on Tap. Long story, we had to change our name, but it came together as several pastors of the kind of churches that just don't really attract young professionals. We all were lamenting that there are some big churches here in Houston that have no problem like throwing a barn dance and getting 300 people to come out, and we're over here celebrating double digits, if at our events. So we thought, well, what if we put our groups together? And what if we had the hook of beer? And we talk about interesting things, and that's the very quick and dirty version of how we got started. So Theology by the Pint.
How long ago was that?
That was in 2015. So we've been going
all right.
a while. Yeah.
Evan, tell us about yourself. What do you do, and how are you involved?
I'm just a boring Lutheran pastor who likes to argue with people. So I do host kind of more
boring and likes to argue with people. It don't usually go together. You're gonna have to work on your intro there.
There you go. I actually host kind of formal debates at the church from time to time, but I would have a lot of debates where not many people showed up. And then I through Facebook stumbled on Theology at the time on tap and went to an event. And I was like, wow, this Sarah lady, she knows how to get a lot of people to an event where they talk about theology. Like, I didn't know that was possible. So I said, well, if you can't beat them, join them. So,
oh my gosh.
I just sort of started volunteering and hanging around. And I was like, if you need help, just let me know. And at the time I was doing this radio show on a very kind of odd progressive radio station in town, and that sort of transitioned into working with that group to do the podcast and radio show and all that. Now we just do a podcast, and I don't have to worry about the progressives radio show anymore. But that's me. And we're in Houston at First Lutheran. So, and behind me is a chalkboard from when the building was built in 1927. So, we like to think that real slate chalkboard adds a lot of,
character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually, we just have nowhere else to put the studio too. So there's that.
Are you in your church right now? Is that? Yeah. Okay. And are you in like downtown Houston? I don't know what.
Yeah, we're like a mile south.
Yeah.
In 1927, when it was built, we were on the outskirts, but these days we're right in the middle of everything. That's why
they're in the cool. It's called Midtown, and it's cool.
We're so cool. There are homeless encampments not far from us. So,
okay,
that's how
that's the type of environment that you're. No, I hear you. I understand.
You're really selling it.
Was that joke a little too
edgy?
Okay.
No, I got it. I understood what you were trying to give a picture of the kind of
21st century America. I'm just, but
no, that's good. So the debates. Do you call them a debate discussion?
No.
How do you like to position it? Because debates really, really grab people. Well, not everybody, but they do. Yeah,
they grab some people. I think they grab either an older demographic or people that are feisty and like to argue. But so they attract the Evan McClanahans of the world. But there's a part of our audience or what we hope our audience is people that have become sort of disillusioned with faith, or disenchanted with the church, have walked away from those things. They're not into institutionalized religion, that sort of people. And so they'll come for the beer, and they'll come knowing that they can hear us charitably disagree with each other, but have this kind of civil discourse. And I think a lot of them are turned off by the term debate. So while that is kind of what we're doing, it's not a formal debate. We're not having like a time of rebuttal. And the bulk of our evenings is actually open Q&A where everybody can text in questions to a panel. But there is debate happening. But yeah, I just don't usually use that word.
Yeah. Well, it's literally a polarizing word. I mean, you have a debate and then you basically deal with, now you have two sides and maybe there's more than one side. Obviously, there typically is.
Right.
So it is sort of avoiding the polarizing nature of literally calling something a debate.
Right.
Yeah.
Winners and losers. But I mean, and we will say at the beginning, like we all, but even on our own leadership team, we disagree about a lot of things. But that we all agree we want you to know and follow Jesus, introduce you to him maybe for the first time,
Yeah.
And then we can disagree about, predestination or fill in the blank, baptism or all of the things we disagree about. Yeah.
How wide? I'm curious. I run an organization and we have disagreements in our team. How wide is the disagreement on your team?
So we're all Protestant. And everybody has signed on to the statement of faith that I cobbled together a few years ago. So I think
that's on your website, right?
It's not on our website, but I can send it to you if you want. It's a pretty.
I'm just curious. I thought I
boilerplate.
But yeah, okay. So they agree to that. But like, what kind of differences end up?
I mean, so as you saw from the last quote debate, we have affirming and traditional. When it comes to homosexuality, definition of marriage, that's probably the area that's the most sort of far out there. But we have Methodists and Lutherans and Baptists and Episcopalian and Anglican and Presbyterian, and I think I've covered it all, non-denom.
Yeah, okay.
So, modes of worship and baptism and soteriology and eschatology and all the ologies, which we always define those words, right? Because our audience doesn't always, they're not all theology nerds. But what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, like the Lord's Supper. I mean, all those sort of normal issues. But I mean, these days, all the divide is kind of around like, I would say progressive or traditional, theology on like ethical issues. So, I would say this though. I think without speaking out of turn, that it's harder and harder to have, like more liberal or progressive, like theologians wanting to engage really at all with people who aren't affirming of their views.
Like it's hard for us to find guest speakers and panelists when we're looking for a progressive viewpoint often.
Have you gotten, I can kind of sense and imagine why, because it is very, my cynical wants to say, well, getting in there and actually having hearty discussion, that's a colonialist white person's way of discerning truth. And we don't want to think that way anymore. Well, but what is the feedback you've gotten as to why they've rejected or declined?
We've had kind of people, roll off and move on to, greener pastures or browner pastures or whatever the pastures look like. And they've been like, I can't believe you hosted that conversation where, where two views on like, gender binary were talked about. It's like, well, if you don't have the two views present, then the other side you're just an echo chamber and you're never going to have the opportunity to have a mind change. So that's kind of the purpose of having, multiple views present so that both sides will kind of show up and hear the best that the other side presents. That's why I host, debates that are, unabashedly, debates with, that are more formal, in nature, things like that. So, I'd say it's fairly wide, on some of those issues, but it does take a pretty tough progressive that I respect to hang in there and sort of not be terribly offended at those issues and still hang around with people like me.
Well, and we're ecumenical, but we're not interfaith. I mean, we are unabashedly Christian. We're Protestant. We are, I think we're all within the lane of orthodoxy, so I want to be sure that people get that. It's not like, well, some of us are Buddhist and some of us are atheist
Have you even held debates outside of that, like, so that people are informed about the other faiths, or?
Yeah. Okay. And we're due to do another one of those world religions conversations. And those are great.
What about Catholic Protestant?
We've done Catholic Protestant. We've done world religions. We've done one with like atheists and humanists and Christians. And yeah. And then, of course, a lot of in-house debates. Like, what about the afterlife? What about hell? The 3 views of hell, or the views of the end times, or that
There's only 3?
What's that? Of hell? 3 big ones.
But like the or other world religions one, like that is the very conversation we have when we say, well, we should have that debate. And there are people like me who are like, well, let's make sure it's not too kumbaya, okay?
Yeah.
Like the purpose needs to be to proclaim the actual Christian gospel in the face and not say, well, we all just worship the same God or something like that. We, and I think we would agree on that. And
no. And I mean, of the live events that I've listened to since I've heard about you, I think that's very obvious that you are not just simply giving everyone a platform and being equal in that sort of coexist bumper sticker kind of way. So like it might be. I mean, I don't know. I haven't listened to all of them, but I mean, I'm hoping that in every one of them the gospel is shared, and that you've had a chance to share the truth, even if that may not have been the dominant voice that someone walks away with. They've heard what you have to say. So I'm kind of curious because we're going to be part of one of your events in June, and that'll be very soon after this episode's going to be released, which will be pretty soon. So if anybody is watching or listening and you're near the Houston area, or I was going to say anywhere in the state of Texas, but like I'll include like Louisiana and Arkansas and anywhere near Houston, or if you just want to go to Houston just to watch.
It's a fun city to visit.
To watch this. Norman Horn,
like Minnesota is closer to Houston than like El Paso. So,
Oh, that's true.
It's a big state.
It's
I had to mail something to El Paso, and I thought El Paso. I didn't know where El Paso was until I looked it up. I mean, I'm sure I noticed, but no, that's true. I might be closer to you than El Paso. I'm in Pennsylvania.
Might be.
I guess because I have no excuse now. All right, so we're doing an event with you. Or one of our members, Norman Horn, our founder of LCI, is going to be joining you for an event in June. And so one of my first questions is, what is the experience like for people who want to show up? Is it just like you drink and you get ready for an event because you're all sharing a drink, and then you have this event, and then what is there? Is there just Q&A and everybody goes home? Is it like people still hang out afterward? Give us a picture of like what's the night like, or day, or whatever.
It's life altering. Okay, like you will never be this. Oh, let me stop. No, it's a lot of fun. I think.
Oh man, you just walked it back.
I will.
You should have just kept going.
When people get there, there's just we have like this, we call it social hour. So we have food and drink. We have a red cup, blue cup system for people that are single and don't want to be single. So they get a blue cup and a sticker, and it's a whole cute thing. And people have met and gotten married, found love and gotten married and had babies. And sometimes I make them stand up to show that it's possible. And so single people in Houston, if you're listening, you should come out, get a blue cup, see if the magic happens. But so there's just a time to like visit and hang out and drink and talk. And then when the event starts, we highlight a different ministry partner or a charity or somebody in Houston that's doing good work. Just put them on the radar of our, say, 150 guests that are there. We do a little bit of trivia, and then there's just, housekeeping stuff. I kind of explain how the night's going to go. And then the opening of the night, the one that you guys are involved in is going to be a little bit different because we have 3 voices instead of 2 at the beginning. But generally speaking, we'll have people representing whatever the quote sides of the issue are. And so we'll give them 10, 12 minutes to share. Say we're doing one on, I don't know, universalism or something. So one person would take the universalist stance and the other one take the traditional stance. They each get 10 minutes-ish. Sometimes they get a little chance to banter back and forth. But then the real like secret sauce, I think, of our events is the second half of the night is an open Q&A format, large format group discussion, I call it. Because everybody in the audience can, if they want, text in questions to me. I MC the events, and I lob them up to a larger panel that includes the initial guest speakers and then a couple other folks from around Houston that I've stalked that disagree. So I'm out there searching for people that have the various viewpoints. You know?
Have them on tap.
Oh yes, good job. Yep, ready to go, fresh. Anyway, and they spar a little bit as they answer questions. And then, yes, people stick around and chat afterwards. And we even offer a week later a follow-up event. If people want to come, it's a lot more intimate. It's usually like 8, 10, 12 people that will come to a local bar, different local bars, and bring some of their follow-up questions. And of course, we really also always want people that just have questions about faith or Jesus or Christianity. There's a box on the little seat cards they get. They can check about that as well if they want to come and just have a beer with one of our leadership team members and and chat about Jesus. I mean, that's kind of our favorite thing. So
yeah.
I hope that answers your question. That's how the night goes.
No, it does. That's a really great picture. And for those who haven't listened, maybe they've already heard of you and now they're listening to me. But if they haven't already listened to your live events, one thing that I really loved about the way that you MC the event is that you don't let people get bogged down in the either, like one-on-one back and forth. You keep the topics moving because you have a deadline.
Yeah.
And that is... I really love how you did that, although there were a few moments where I'm like, well, but wait, I want to hear what they have to say. And the good news is because I saw the podcast feed and I was looking at it weeks later, I saw that you had a follow-up interview, which I guess if I didn't know that, I would have been a little more frustrated. But I think it was like the part 2 on the LGBT, whatever that was.
We've done part 2 on a couple of them where there were so many follow-up questions that we felt like we had to give a whole podcast episode to that. Yeah. But what you don't know, you wanted it to keep going, but if you were in the audience and you had a question in the queue, you might not have wanted it to keep going,
Do you do these live or is it you have to be there?
So we do live stream them.
That's what I mean, live stream.
And people can text in their questions from anywhere. And I don't know. I mean, we have a very kind of clunky system, but it works for us where they just text them to my phone. But like at the last one we did, which was about LGBT, it was about homosexuality. I left with 60 unread text messages, and I had already flown through probably.
Yeah, there were a lot of them.
45, 50. I mean, so yeah. And I'm trying to get as many of those questions up to the panel. And if I notice there are similar questions, I'll try to clump them together. But
yeah, right.
A lot of people not getting their question answered, so that's why.
Do people stick around and try to mingle with the people? Yeah, okay. And how long? I can imagine that being.
Depends on when Evan wants to kick them out. If the event is here,
I start blinking lights after like an hour. I'm like, I gotta go home.
Yeah.
If we host,
well, it takes a while to tear down. The one you guys are coming to, people will probably stick around easily an hour afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. So before we talk specifics,
to have a caffeine drink is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh, he will be well caffeinated. Trust me. Before we reveal what that topic is, if I haven't already, it's on our website by now. People would have already noticed, and I would have already promoted this. But for those who are just listening to this, before we get to the topic, how do you actually plan what your next topic's going to be? I'm guessing you're thinking about what 2025 might look like, and you're doing a little bit of planning out, or whatever length of time you plan out. How do you decide what is going to be appealing to people? Because that's a big gamble depending on the topic. And you can't repeat the same topic that's always popular because people just start dissipating in their attendance. So how do you choose?
We do it democratically. I feel like that's a good thing to say to a libertarian.
We actually do it
maybe not.
It's republicly.
You read democratic republicly.
Okay, let me stop.
Yeah.
So it's a
anarchically could also work.
Yeah. What's that?
Anarchically
or dictatorially.
I mean, if it's a benevolent monarch, maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know.
Am I a benevolent dictator?
Sarah's a queen. Okay.
Oh, thank you for recognizing that. Oh my gosh.
And it's a monarchy, and she dictates. So anyway.
So it's a couple things. I mean, we're always trying to keep our finger on the pulse of what the culture wars are talking about or what people are into, but we also ask our audience. We ask them all the time if they have suggestions, and then we will put several of those suggestions on a poll and let people vote. Excuse me. So the one that you guys are involved in, it won the vote for whatever we said, hey, this is for our June event or whatever. So we have the next several lined up. I think the next one I need poll answers for would be December. So we have them kind of set for the next few months. And I try to sort of toggle back and forth between more theology, more culture, that kind of thing. I mean, obviously with the election coming up, our October one is going to be just political. I mean, we are just going to get into the weeds about who to vote for and why and all that kind of stuff. And we can do that because we're not a church. So we don't have to worry about offending people.
Well, basically, we just look at what Tucker Carlson's talking about. And we, so Christian nationalism, aliens, that's
hilarious.
I kind of joke, but our next event is about aliens. Are they demons or apparently primordial earth creatures that have come out
Nephilim
of the earth. Yeah.
Out from the center of the earth. Yes.
I found that one to be a little really? You're going to talk about that? That was so popular in the late 90s when I was into it. Or maybe that was when I thought it was popular because I was into it.
That's funny.
But it
was voted on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the demon piece of it is, I'm going to definitely be tuning into that one for sure. So the event that we're part of is June 11th. And so what won the vote so that everybody knows what Norman's going to be dispensing truth about?
Yeah, I think the title is One Nation Under God, ? We're going to be exploring Christian nationalism, patriotism, and idolatry. Of course, Christian nationalism is such a loaded term, so we'll have to be defining what that is. And are those people crazy? Are they right? How ought government to work? How ought we think about it as Christians? Should God's law be our law? Can governments be neutral? I mean, all that kind of conversation we're going to cram that all into 2 hours. Eek.
Mm-hmm. Let's just put it out there. Why are Christian nationalists Nazis? Let's just say it now.
My gosh. All right. You lost because you mentioned Nazis first.
I know.
Yeah.
I broke the rule. Okay.
Are you trying to do that? This is a very repeating pattern for you, Evan, in the show that I'm listening to.
I'm just inserting bad humor here. So
okay. All right.
Yeah.
So was that something people were requesting, or did you just come up with it? Because that's kind of because Tucker Carlson is talking about it, Sarah. I mean,
oh my gosh, the Tucker thing is a joke. Do not listen to Evan.
Yeah, I know.
Do listen to him, but not when he says
Tucker Carlson is following you because his interview with Doug Wilson on Christian nationalism came after your decision to do this one.
It did. Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
it did come after our decision. That term has been thrown around so much. And especially now that Donald Trump is back on the ticket. And I think I keep thinking to myself, so I'm a Christian and I love our country. Does that make me a Christian nationalist? Anyway, but it was on the poll and it won. You say no.
I just solved it. No,
we don't even have to have the event anymore. I'm not a Christian nationalist.
I will say we've had some like this is a book we actually got in the mail by a pastor named David Ritchie. It's called Why Do the Nations Rage? The Demonic Origin of Nationalism. So he and I interviewed, it's deep on our podcast feed somewhere. We had technical issues, like the internet died, like Comcast.
It was a demon.
Work out the internet that day or something.
Deep state. So, that's the same thing.
It might be. So anyway, so we had like an intro, that was like a year ago. So we've talked about it for a while. I'm a big fan of American Vision and Gary DeMar. So we had him on to talk about.
Oh, we nearly got canceled for that one.
Yeah, because of course the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, thinks American Vision is a hate group. So we had people kind of rolling in on that and saying, "How dare you talk to Gary DeMar?" Even though all we basically talked about is like an introduction to theonomy. But that definitely touches on at least some of these issues. So and it being an election year, and it seems like this is going to be the tactic of the left is to basically say, a vote for, and as a libertarian, you might not be a fan of Donald Trump, although he is going to like the libertarian parties, like conference.
National convention, yeah.
But, if you're kind of the tack that like it's going to come down to kind of one of two parties, because it's a two-party system and a vote for a third party is not going to be very effective. And one of the sides is saying that like Christian nationalism is on the ballot, and they're a threat to democracy, and they're going to be autocrats and theocrats,
and we'll never vote again.
Every other kind of crat or gark, like oligarchy. Then it's like it's out there. It's definitely in the ether enough to where and it says it invokes Christians. So
yeah,
I'm hopeful we can. I think there's going to be a lot of defining at the event, like what do we mean by these terms, and like so I'll be curious to see how much time there really is kind of for back and forth.
Well, and I'll throw one more thing in there. Like there's a lot of conversation about other topics that get talked about a lot, say abortion or LGBTQ rights and these kind of things that all kind of come back to like, what is the law supposed to do? What is it able to do? What is it doing? Do I think that's fair? Do I think the government should be able to tell me, quote, what I can do with my body? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
All swims back to this kind of idea, like who's in charge? Why are they in charge? Ought they be in charge? And where are they sort of taking their moral standard cues from? So.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think, I know that the debate over the definition of Christian nationalism, it always makes me a little, what's the word? A little leery that if you allow too many definitions to be present, everybody can define it in a way that nobody would dislike, right? Like it allows everybody to define Christian nationalism in the nicest way possible, and everybody shrugs and says, oh, well, if that's all they mean by it, then it's not so bad. And it actually can be really bad because that's not normally what everyone means by it, nor is it sort of the beast that actually evolves as a Christian nationalism. So how do you plan to keep that from being the case?
Well, first of all, that's not my job. I'm just the MC, which is the beauty of being the MC.
Okay.
And you've been privy to the emails, so you know that one of our presenters even said, can we get the definition from the Christian nationalist who's going to be sort of, repping that team so that we all know going in what he means when he says it, so that maybe there won't be so much back and forth about, well, what I think it means and what you think it means. And so he presented a definition by email that I think everyone will be sort of referring back to that.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that'll be kind of helpful. And he also is a theonomist. So I don't know if you maybe want to give a quick definition of what a theonomist is for the audience.
Well, the word just means God's law, and it basically is the argument that God's law is for all people. And so there are, you should look to Old Testament law, including the civil law, not ceremonial, because that is fulfilled in Christ. But the moral and civic laws still have relevance today and should be applied as case law, because America's jurisprudence is essentially built on British understanding of common law, which is that law develops over time through cases, so case law. And so the Bible should be the source of that. But basically, it's, that the Bible is the source of truth and goodness and everything pure and holy. So
laws have to be applied based on that.
Yeah. I mean, at least it should be congruent with that. So the easy example is the parapet around the roof. The law. But none of us have flat roofs. Although I'm looking at a flat roof right out that window. But you should.
It does have a parapet. You'll be.
It does have a
very
parapet.
Pleased to know.
But you do that for the sake of your neighbor, as a sign of loving your neighbor. So, well, if we don't have flat roofs, what does that mean? Well, it means you put a fence around your swimming pool. It means you put, various. It means
protections.
It means OSHA says that your rail of your balcony should be 36 inches, or your stairwell. These sorts of things. So there are ways of taking Old Testament law and applying it. So that would. But the question in modern America is, as we attempt to be this like secular democracy, which is arguably not what we are. But the question is kind of by what standard then do we decide on big issues like abortion, but on smaller issues like I don't know, like I was going to say smaller issues like free speech. But you look at whether, you look at the law that just passed on. Yeah,
exactly.
You look at the law that just passed, like the House on, anti-Semitism. So adding this layer of a protected class for free speech. And there's a debate on the right, saying, whoa, that's, that this is not the sort of thing we want to be doing. And that has a lot of biblical tie-ins, because one of the things about that law is that you can't say that Jews are responsible for the death of Christ or something to that effect, because that's anti-Semitic. Now that's kind of violating the law by this standard they came up with. So I think Christian nationalism does kind of cut to the heart of like, what are we as a nation? Who are we as a nation? What is our history? And then, what are the enforcement mechanisms? We do have an anarchist who's regularly on the White Pill Radio episodes.
And part of our board. Yeah.
I mean, and he's always like, well, are you willing to do that by the threat of a gun?
That's kind of his go-to line. That's great. Yeah.
What's his name?
Yeah. Ken Cowan.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So it's like, I get it. Like, at the end of the day, that's what government is. It's a gun to your head, pay your taxes or we take this away from you. And I don't disagree with that per se. Usually doesn't end up at that point. Yeah. So.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I think you still have an Anabaptist coming on, or a former Anabaptist on the panel for this event.
Oh, Nick may be a former Anabaptist. I don't remember that. But yeah.
Or maybe he's a Christian anarchist.
He was a Christian anarchist. And now he's basically like, we should disengage from, Christians should disengage from politics. That
would be more Anabaptist tradition, yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably the sort of stream that he would be swimming in.
Yeah. It's gonna be an interesting conversation for sure.
Well, yeah, it will be. And I'm glad that you had that preliminary, like, hey, let's define this, because you're right. There are a lot of things. Let's define Christian nationalism before we get too in the weeds on this, because there are a lot of those ancillary issues that people really want to hear. Like, how do we legislate this? Like you just described. And so you're right. It would probably get too drawn out in that way, which I'm sure you wouldn't let happen, because you do that on live. And so that's really great. I'm kind of curious, like, that the tenor of the conversation is always relatively warm. I mean, I haven't heard people who disagree and like on stage sort of I would say battling it out. They're not really battling it out. What's that?
Lose their crap.
Yeah. I haven't people not do that or just be sort of animus toward one another on the issues of like LGBTQ in the church. I mean, you had somebody who was an affirming pastor.
Yeah.
Or a pastor who was affirming. And you had him there. You were welcome and affirming of his presence on your stage, right? And so that's no small feat for people who probably disagree with him. And that shows a tremendous amount of love and charity and generosity to somebody. I was going to say this earlier, but we kind of moved on. The part where Jesus says that, that people will know you're my disciples by your love for one another. This is one way that you guys are doing that because you're demonstrating at very minimum the charitable argument that you can have about something that everyone knows Christians or disagree about, or everyone knows that Christians hate this type of person or hate this type of lifestyle or whatever you want to say. There's always that like assumption, and you're showing that either we disagree and we disagree charitably, and also that we're not here to run your lives. We're here to help you come to the truth by giving you the truth and letting it be there. I mean, you're practicing that as well.
Well, the beer helps, and I'm that's a little bit of a joke, but
no, well, I know you say that, but it's
well, none of us are angry drunks. That's
oh my gosh,
because you have a limit, right?
Let me just say, we are not getting drunk at these events. You only get 2 drink tickets.
Yes,
that is just a joke.
And there you can't purchase anymore. Like it's literally you're cut off at 2 kind of thing.
Oh, for sure, you're cut off at 2.
Yeah. Okay.
So the beer helps. Having a sense of humor helps.
Yeah.
And obviously we're only inviting people that, and I mean, I can't fully vet people, but I'm trying to vet them as much as I can, inviting people to speak that are going to be respectful. And we have never really had, I mean, there are moments that have started to get tense, which we don't mind a little bit of tension. That can be fun and helpful. But I think like for me, and I'm part of the audience when I'm listening to all of this, I want to hear the best arguments and the best counter arguments in real time, even if it's not something that's super divisive, even if it's just, I'm trying to figure out what I think about the end times, right? Like in the end, that is not remotely salvific. But it's interesting. And so if I can hear people from all 3 camps kind of sparring in real time, then I think, oh, that's how they read that verse. I never heard that counter argument, which kind of explains, You get the point. But we have had some spicy moments.
I've heard of some. They were kind of before me. But,
before his time, we had a few that I won't repeat on here. They were a little salacious. But even in the LGBT one or LGB that you listened to, there was a moment where one of the pastors said, I can't believe you read that passage and came away with that. I remember that. The word is I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And it was like my eyebrows got raised because he might have said it in a calm voice, but he was basically saying, you're crazy, But then he said, but I respect you.
Yeah. So. I will say, because I mean, Sarah wouldn't toot her own horn, but it would be hard to actually reproduce this ministry just anywhere, because you do need someone like Sarah who, is kind and welcoming and, loving towards other people and has the personality and the charisma to actually host an event and keep it going. There's a secret sauce here. So,
that's very nice.
I mean, that is part of the reality. My idea of a good time is getting 2 grumpy people and giving them microphones and letting them have a formal debate for 2 hours. I could never do theology by the pint. Okay. So it does take, it does take someone kind of with like that spiritual gift of like the hospitality and all that kind of stuff.
Are you like me when like you go into like a small group and you haven't left having at least some little bit of a disagreement with somebody? You feel like the night was wasted?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I pick fights every chance I get, so lovingly. I mean, it's never personal, but to me, it's like, I don't want to have small talk. Like I want to get into the meat of the thing. And Theology on Tap is kind of like, or Theology by the Pint is I don't want to say it's both, but it's like very accessible to someone who doesn't know a lot about theology. Mm-hmm. But like if they want some pretty, substantial content, like it's there, especially if you kind of listen. But it should open the door to further research in almost all cases, Well,
I want to talk about that accessibility piece there. In fact, it's funny. This conversation's going it probably feels pretty random. And my outline is pretty much doing what we're doing, which haven't edited since we've been talking. And I'm just like, wow, either my brain is random on how I wanted this conversation to go, or somehow the Lord just, made it all work out. I want to talk about that accessibility piece.
Calvinist, so it's the latter.
Well, I'm Lutheran, but I like Calvin. But anyway, yeah.
So you're mostly right.
Yeah.
I used to be Calvinist.
Gotcha.
So we can have, if I'm ever in Houston, we can have our discussion about it then.
Well, if you come in November, that's what the topic is going to be. So
on Calvinism?
Yeah. Well, we won't call it.
Oh, I was thinking October. Yeah, no, I hear you.
A more accessible title. Yes.
Yeah.
Predestination and free will or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. So the accessibility piece, there are a lot of words that will easily get thrown around when you have 3-4 pastors, theologians on stage. How do you make sure that the people who are 10% drunk, not fully drunk, and also doesn't know some of these words, knows what those mean? Do you pause people? Like, what do you do?
Oh, 100% I pause people. And some have to get paused more than others.
Yeah.
Now people have started to get trained. And so they'll say like, well, my hermeneutic, which is just a word that means da-da-da. So we really encourage a lot of parenthetical statements where you pause and explain what that word is. Yeah. Some people still say telos too much and they know who they are. Or things like that. But
such a great word. Why doesn't everybody know it?
Well, and they will if they keep coming to our events, but we will then say what that is. And
Sarah never has a problem with me. My vocabulary is still at like 6th grade level, so
it's not true.
I doubt that.
But I do. I pause people a lot, and I try to tell people ahead of time that our audience is really diverse. We have some theology nerds that know all the words, and some that you might not even know, and then we have people that have left the church partly because it's overwhelming and they're not, quote, into theology, but they'll come because there's beer and their friends are coming. And so we want to be accessible to all those people. Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever let your personal beliefs get involved while you're emceeing? Like, is it ever hard?
It's funny because when we did this for the first few years, I was Switzerland. I was super neutral. I didn't ever tip my hand. I don't even think people knew. In fact, when he mentioned that we lost kind of the whole progressive end of our team after we hosted a debate on the gender binary. And what's funny is that some of the people were upset with me because they thought I was on the, quote, other side than I actually am because I was so neutral. But in the last few years, I've thought, why am I being neutral? This is silly. I think I've arrived thoughtfully to my convictions. And so sometimes I will step in and say, come on, or I'll ask a question and I'll say, like, this question could very well be my question. And I've had some of our repeat audience members say like, oh, we know now. We know what you think about such and such. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, you probably earned a little bit of credibility by being neutral first, right? Like,
yeah, maybe. And I am very quick to say that something is secondary, even if I feel strongly about it,
Yeah.
And we talk about a lot of secondary things. And secondary doesn't not mean unimportant.
Sure.
But it does mean, there will be infant baptizers and believer baptizers in heaven, So.
Yeah, I think this is a conversation we've actually had for years as an organization, which is, but are we neutral?
Right.
Are we just a forum that host views and we don't actually have a take? And I think the danger in that is that, there can be an issue where are we compromising our integrity as Christians, to host an event and sort of not at least on the back end know that as an organization we have this feeling about it. Just take LGBT issues. The leadership team can have certain points of view, but as an organization, do we have one kind of point of view? Anyway, I won't answer all that. But if someone wanted to replicate this ministry, that it's going to be it can be kind of a growth area. So put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the other element in that is possibly a side benefit. And this is maybe just a side thought that I'm having as you're talking about it. There are types of Christians who are traditionally known as not being open-minded and are not being known as charitable toward other views. That's usually the more traditional views. It sounds like you guys hold pretty much the more traditional views on some of those culture war issues. But for you to be an organization that is like that is producing a show that shows the generosity, charity, love, and openness toward alternative views might actually be a better witness in the end, rather than just being a sort of milquetoast neutral location for people to be platformed.
I love hearing you say that. I think that's awesome that that's a takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely are a more traditional. I mean, our leadership team lands traditionally on a lot of those kind of secondary issues. But yeah, we want to hear all the best arguments, like I said earlier. So I think that's great that that's the takeaway. Yeah.
So where can people find you? And tell the details of the event that Norman's going to be a part of. And
So the June 11th event, so almost all our events are on Tuesday nights. It just turns out that's a good night to do this kind of thing in Houston. So Tuesday, June 11th, that will be at Oak Forest Anglican Church, just north of the Loop. If you're in Houston, that means something to you. And they start at 6:30. That first half hour is like the visiting and, finding love and networking and visiting, all that kind of stuff. It sort of officially starts at 7, goes for a couple hours. You can find us at theologybythepint.org. And all of our upcoming events are on there. Ways to give are on there. A little bit about what we believe. And you said something earlier about, is it on our website? On our website, we do just have a couple little snippets about how we define the gospel.
Okay.
And some of that's also in our statement of faith. But yeah, I mean, and all of the leadership team is also on there so that you can go and read the bio about our cranky get off my lawn guy, which is Evan. Mm-hmm. And our, more loving, kind. No, I'm joking. He is very loving and kind. But all of the members of our leadership team are on there if people want to explore. And we'll be adding some soon.
Address, right?
Yep. Theologybythepint.org.
Yeah, okay.
Or theologybythepint.com. Or theologybythepint.net. Listen, we've taken them all. So go wherever you want. All paths lead to Theology by the Pint.
All right. Well, that's a really great place to end. I really appreciate you guys joining me for this. I'm looking forward to, I'll have to watch it on the live stream because I won't be able to make it. But Norman, my partner in crime, I guess you could say, our fearless leader at LCI is going to be there. And everybody is going to just be so wowed by what he has to say. It's just going to be a clear winner, even though it's not a debate.
Okay. And out of 3, that's even harder.
Yeah,
so
it's
a lot of confidence.
Yeah. I'm just hyping it up so that he is even more on his game than he thought he had to be.
That's great. I love it. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for being here, guys.
Yep.